Subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon to never miss an update from RAU'S.
Dear students, RAU'S Prelims Test Series 2021 is a complete testing and revision course for the upcoming prelims examination. The program will help you prepare for UPSC prelims through a step-up approach. It is a meticulously designed study plan to organize your preparation and keep you on track towards covering the prelims GS and CSAT syllabus extensively from NCERT to the advanced level. The goal of our Prelims Test Series 2021 program is to exhaustively cover all standard sources of study material, including NCERT, with a study plan to test you at par with UPSC level of questions, thereby improving your chances of clearing the prelims examination. To give multiple revision of the entire syllabus from the perspective of civil service prelims pattern, the test series program will also give you the final revision of all topics and themes before the examination through QIP videos and prelims compass notes. The QIP videos or Quality Improvement Program videos are for speedy revision of all important topics for the upcoming prelims examination. QIP videos are kind of crash course for the prelims examination. And prelims compass are 8 subject-wise prelims compilation of all static and current affair topics important for the upcoming prelims. RAU'S Prelims Test Series 2021 will include topics test, testing the concept of candidate. It will include thematic test on both the concept and the current affair of that particular theme. It will also include current affair tests covering the monthly current affairs. And there will be full-length test before the final exam to simulate you for the D-Day. There is a link in the description of this video. You can click on the link for registration and to also check out the demo QIP.
Hello and welcome to Daily News Simplified, an answer to what, why and how of newspaper analysis from the perspective of UPSC examination. Today, we have taken up Delhi edition of The Hindu newspaper dated 2nd of December 2020. All the news items which are relevant for civil services UPSC examination which appear in newspaper today have been discussed in recent past. So in this particular session, we are just going to learn about the references to these articles. At the same time, we are also going to look into some of the past year questions from prelims examination to understand how to approach these kinds of news. Let us now begin the discussion. So the first news which we are going to take up appears on page number 6, Slow Progress. WHO must work alongside China in quickly uncovering the origins of the virus. This article scrutinizes the functioning of WHO, especially with respect to COVID-19 pandemic. And in this regard, we have had the same discussion in the DNS dated 30th of March 2020. Now, the functioning of WHO becomes important from the perspective of GS paper 2. We have a line in the syllabus which says important international institutions, agencies, fora, their structure and mandate. And similarly, we had the same discussion. We started the discussion by first understanding what WHO is, and we understood that it is a specialized agency of United Nations headquartered at Geneva. Broad objective of WHO is to monitor public health risks and oversee responses to emergencies. Then we briefly discussed the past successes of WHO. So it is not like it has always failed. The purpose for which WHO was created, it has been able to achieve many of them. For example, it was a leader in the steps towards eradication of smallpox and polio. It oversaw the development of vaccines for Ebola. It played a key role in controlling of HIV/AIDS, malaria and TB infections, and it is already playing a key role in creating awareness regarding lifestyle diseases. And so when it comes to the response of WHO in the wake of COVID-19 pandemic, nations across the world are quite angry and baffled at the same time. And in this regard, we had this discussion regarding four important and key powers of WHO and how WHO chose to utilize those powers. Starting with, WHO indeed has the power to act upon non-state sources of information. Because more often than not, nation states and their governments hide a lot of data, especially with respect to a disease outbreak. And so, WHO was given this power utilizing IHR 2005, which enabled WHO to utilize non-state sources of information, for example, media reports, reports from various NGOs. And so, in this particular case, when the news related to the initial outbreak of COVID started to emanate from China in November, WHO remained dependent on official Chinese data. They said that unless and until Chinese government comments, we will not say anything. It ignored Chinese government's whistleblowers' warnings and it agreed with China till as late as January that there was no human-to-human transmission of COVID-19 pandemic, which can be held responsible for the delayed response and massive spread and rapid spread of COVID. Then WHO also has power to question member states on their decision making. But till very late, WHO remained politically correct and tried to use very measured words against China. The hegemony of the China or the power of China can be felt from the fact that still Taiwan is not a member of WHO. Then WHO has power to declare an outbreak as a public health emergency, but WHO waited simply too long before declaring COVID as public health emergency. Since WHO is a very important international organization, and so when the chief of WHO expresses displeasure or disappointment with respect to the actions taken by various nations, it means a lot. It creates global shockwaves. But instead of that, WHO chief and instead actually praised Chinese steps. So this was the discussion which we had, and the PDF of today's DNS contained these notes. Let us now move on to the next news. Then this next news item appears on international page. In Karabakh region, Putin plays Peacemaker. Now this news article with respect to Armenia versus Azerbaijan fighting over a region known by the name of Nagorno-Karabakh has already been discussed twice in our Daily News Simplified. Now let us first understand why this news is important. The conflicts taking place across the world are important mainly from the perspective of prelims examination with respect to questions which deal with map locations. For example, let's first consider this question which was asked in 2017. Mediterranean Sea is a border of which of the following countries? Jordan, Iraq, Lebanon and Syria. And the right answer is C. Only Lebanon and Syria border Mediterranean Sea, but not Jordan and neither Iraq. Now if you try to think as to why this particular question was framed, it was because a war was going on in Syria and Iraq, and Jordan and Lebanon are their neighboring countries. And so it was expected of you that whenever you read any news related to the conflict arising out of Islamic State, you go and check the map and their location, and that is where these conflicts become important. Similarly, in 2014, UPSC had asked, on the left hand side there were locations and on the right hand side there were countries, and you were expected to know which one of them correctly matched with each other. And all these three locations are conflict-driven regions. Chechnya is a conflict-driven region of Russia, whereas Darfur does not belong to Mali, rather it is in Sudan, whereas Swat Valley is in Pakistan and not in Iraq, but was in news due to shooting of Malala Yousafzai. And so the right answer was A. But nonetheless it became important because of the locations kept appearing in the newspaper. And finally in 2018, the same location surrounding Mediterranean Sea. You were expected to know which one of them had matched correctly. Aleppo, Syria, Kirkuk, Yemen, Mosul, Palestine, Mazar-e Sharif, Afghanistan. And so that is why when we first discussed this news on 30th of September 2020 related to Nagorno-Karabakh, we started with map locations. We understood the location of Nagorno-Karabakh. Then from there on, we understood the neighboring countries of both Armenia and Azerbaijan. We understood the location of Nagorno-Karabakh, what is its relation with both Armenia as well as Azerbaijan. And just to summarize, although it is located within Azerbaijan, but it is populated by Armenians. And then the history and the reason behind the conflict was also discussed in DNS dated 30th of September 2020, where we discussed that how Armenia gained control in 1994 over this particular region. And since then, it has been controlled by Armenian government. But since 25 years, why the war has again begun in 2019 and 20? And the reasons behind them were also discussed, mainly with respect to the religious conflict, Armenia being Christian Orthodox country, Azerbaijan being majority Shia country. With the rise of Turkish nationalism headed by Mr. Erdogan, Azerbaijan has gained a lot of support from there, and also a pipeline project meant to transport petroleum from Caspian Sea to Eastern European countries passes very close to the Nagorno-Karabakh region. And Azerbaijan fears that Armenia at any time could cut off the petroleum supply, threatening the economic stability of the country. And that is why Azerbaijan felt that it is very important now to gain the control over this particular region. Not just that, just 2 weeks ago, Faizan sir also discussed the same issue, again starting with the map locations. And in the same DNS, since the outcome of the war was more or less clear, the discussion was about the role played by both Turkey and Russia. And the article which appears in the newspaper today deals with this part of the discussion, the role played by Russia, or you can say the role played by Mr. Putin in signing of peace deal between Armenia and Azerbaijan. Now, as to how it has boosted, the peace deal has actually uplifted Russia's position is because Russia is the only signatory of the peace deal beyond the leaders of the two warring states. Then, the fact that Russian border and customs services is going to control and operate a newly created route that will connect Azerbaijan with its enclave in Nakhichevan. And then finally, why didn't Russia intervene in the favor of Armenia? Because it was expected that it will. And the reason behind that was Russia actually understood that the balance of power had already tilted in favor of Azerbaijan, which is much richer, powerful, and also has the support of local Turkish government. And so that is why, instead of intervening in favor of Armenia, Russia thought it better to negotiate a peace deal. The next article, The Last Straw is Being Further Disabled, appears on page number 6. And it talks about how denying a prisoner with disabilities his recognized rights is a legal wrong and displays lack of compassion on behalf of the government. Now, the main theme of this article, which is combining two sections, one being prisoner and then that prisoner being disabled, does not fit too well in the overall scheme of UPSC syllabus. What is important from UPSC syllabus, however, is the issues and challenges related to disabled sections and what the government is doing for them. It will directly get covered in issues related to vulnerable section under GS paper 2. Now in this regard, Faizan sir already had a discussion on 16th of September 2020 with respect to an editorial talking about disability, which gets covered under social empowerment as well as welfare schemes for vulnerable sections of population. In that DNS, he started the discussion by first discussing issues related to persons with disability. And the idea was summarized through a quote, disability is not the problem, but accessibility is the problem. And so the main issues which they face are, the first is that they are not equally included or represented. There is a lack of infrastructure directly catering to differently abled people, which then results in lower employment rates. Then the issue related to social exclusion and stigma, and the mentality that disabled are not the direct right holders but passive recipients of schemes. So the issues were discussed very elaborately. And then in the same DNS, Faizan sir also discussed the measures taken by the central government with respect to differently abled, starting with Rights of Persons with Disability Act, which has increased the number of disabilities from 7 to 21. and has added mental illness, autism, spectrum disorder, cerebral palsy, muscular dystrophy, chronic neurological conditions, speech and language disability, thalassemia, hemophilia, and sickle cell anemia under the umbrella of disabilities. And also, an important aspect is that acid attack victims and Parkinson's disease have also been included. It has provided for 4% reservation in government jobs and 5% in higher education, and then it has laid the foundation for free education for children between 6 to 18 years of age if they are differently abled. Then the scheme for implementation of Person with Disability Act, National Fellowship for Students with Disabilities, and Rashtriya Vayashri Yojana were also discussed. So it is advised that you go through the discussion done on 16th of September 2020. The next news article again appears on page number 6, Regional Priorities. Now 3 years after joining 8-nation Shanghai Cooperation Organization, India has hosted SCO Heads of Governments meeting for the first time. And in this regard, this particular editorial appears. And the main takeaways of this particular meeting was the commitment to strengthening multilateralism and the UN Charter, while welcoming the fact that grouping is now being seen as an influential and responsible participant in the modern system of international relations. Now, in this manner, this has been already discussed on 29th of November, that is just 3 days ago, by Mehak ma'am. And in that, few of the important information with respect to SEO was discussed. But before that, let us see a question which was asked in 2020 prelims, in which one of the following groups are all the 4 members of G20. And the answer is Argentina, Mexico, South Africa, and Turkey, that is A. So groups and organizations are very important, especially from the perspective of prelims examination. And so that is why a discussion on SEO is very important, which is a permanent intergovernmental international organization which aims to maintain peace, security, and stability in Eurasian region. As far as the member states are concerned, Kazakhstan, China, Kyrgyzstan, Russia, Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, India, and Pakistan are its members. So if you have to remember out of all the 5 Central Asian countries which one of them is not a member, then that is Turkmenistan. Except for Turkmenistan, all 4 others, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, and Uzbekistan are its members, along with India, Pakistan, and China and Russia. Then there are 3 kinds of bodies which assist the functioning of SEO. First is Heads of the State Council, which is a supreme SEO body. Then we have Heads of Government Council, which actually approves the budget, considers and decides upon issues related to economic spheres. And then we have Council of Ministers of Foreign Affairs, which consider issues related to day-to-day activities. An important aspect of SEO is Regional Anti-Terrorist Structures, or RATs, which was established to combat terrorism, separatism, and extremism. And now here you should focus that this is something which almost all the member states face, whether it is India, China, Pakistan, or even Russia. And so that is why a regional anti-terrorist structure was created. And it is important to keep in mind that it is based in Beijing. Now, as and when articles relating to importance of SEO's membership for India and its implications appear, we will discuss the mains related perspective then. Let's now move on to the next article. Then this next news, PMI shows manufacturing losing steam, appears on page number 12, which talks about the latest release of PMI data, which indicates that there is an improvement in wider industrial activity as the PMI data is more than 50. Now these indices which we discuss in our DNS are very important. Although not released by the government, but still they give us indication with respect to the economic activity. And similar other indices have been asked in the past. For example, in 2019, UPSC asked which one of the following is not a sub-index of the World Bank's Ease of Doing Index. And so an important aspect whenever you read an index is to remember what are the parameters through which that index is calculated. Then in 2015, UPSC had asked which of the following brings out the consumer price index. So you should also keep in mind the issuing authority of that particular index. And then in 2015, UPSC had asked in the index of 8 core industries, which one of the following is given the highest weight. And so the composition of indices are very important. And so PMI was discussed on 5th of November by Pallavi Shada ma'am, in which we discussed that it is published by Japanese firm Nikkei and compiled and constructed by Market Economics. Then PMI is not a ground survey, but rather it is calculated on the basis of information received from companies on various factors that represent demand conditions. PMI actually take in responses from a company on a monthly basis on whether there has been an improvement, deterioration or no change for a set of parameters relative to previous month. Then the parameters are new orders, output, employment, suppliers, delivery and stock of purchases, and that is formulated in a form of a questionnaire which is administered to 500 private sector companies. Now it is important to remember that there is a separate PMI for manufacturing as well as services sector. So whenever you read an index, it is important to keep in mind the issuing authority, its parameters as well as its components. So this brings us to the end of today's discussion. Today was an unusual day for paper discussion because most of the news have already been discussed in the past. Let us now move on to the question for the day.